Hey everyone, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. I've got with me Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider. We're going to talk a little basketball here for a bit. And I think all eyes on this at this point, Steve, are currently on the 76ers. Fair to say that the first three games they've played have gone well. What sort of stands out about them at this point to you?
It's kind of funny. The eyes are, I think, kind of split. There are eyes on the 76ers for how good they look. And then there are other set of eyes, or at least people are splitting their vision and looking out in LA at the Lakers at the train wreck they can't seem to turn away from. The Sixers, though, we always thought that on paper that would work. The combining Harden and Embiid would work, and so far so good. The X factor there was always going to be, James Harden and his attitude.
Yeah,
he's had some issues at other places, and most particularly Houston, but I think I know the Sixers' hope was that with all the blowback that Harden had gotten at other places, that he would come into this situation and want to prove people wrong and prove to people that he could work in this team setting and he could make someone else better and all those things. And so far, that's exactly what's been happening.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't played, the toughest teams. Two of those wins have been against the second biggest train wreck in the league, and that's the Knicks. So, you don't want to get ahead of yourself on any of that. But certainly, what you want to see is what you've seen. You want to see them destroy the Knicks, and you want to see them look like they play well together. And Tyrese Maxey has been good for them as well. One guy who kind of seems like the odd man out here is Tobias Harris. And he's a pretty good 3-point shooter. He's been a good corner 3-point shooter. You could certainly stick him in the corner and work from there. Problem is you're paying him $37 million, and it's tough to have a guy you're sticking in the corner for $37 million. Is there a way for Harris to fit in here? How do you see that playing out?
Well, yeah, I mean, having another scorer around is never really a bad thing, right? But what your point is that they're paying that guy all that money to be number 4 on their list, perhaps.
Yeah.
That goes back to the original sin, the original mistake of Ben Simmons. You had to pay a guy like Tobias Harris that kind of money to keep him because you needed him to support Ben Simmons. When they let Jimmy Butler go, they couldn't afford to let another quote unquote scorer go. So, that they were kind of boxed into a corner, or so they thought. So that goes, it goes back to that issue, I think.
Yeah, 2 years, $80 million still left on that contract after this year. Can you move that? Is that a movable number? There was a time where I think that would be impossible, but maybe not so much now.
Yeah, I don't see how. If there's a team that thinks that he's the linchpin to get them, over the top, put it this way here: if a team like the Lakers were playing better, and thought they might have a real chance at something, would they try to put something together to get another scorer, someone to keep people away a little bit, or give Anthony Davis and LeBron James a little more room to work? That might be a spot, but it's hard to see someone paying a guy that much money because that's the kind of money you pay to a magnetic player.
Yeah.
And Tobias Harris, for all his talent, and he's a very, very good basketball player, he's not one of those guys.
Yeah, one team that has had interest in him in the past, though, that I've heard, and certainly has put themselves in a position to make a move for somebody like him is Dallas, and I think that would be a team to watch. They've had an interest in Harris for a while now, and the move they made at the deadline to kind of split up that Porzingis contract, which was $37 million in itself, and now they've got Bertans and I think he is at 16 million, and Hardaway, and Dinwiddie at 18 million. Now they might have the pieces to where they could put together an offer that, if you're Philadelphia, I think you'd have to consider. If you were to put up Tim Hardaway Jr. And kind of what he does, and then Spencer Dinwiddie as well. I think the Sixers would like some depth in the backcourt. I think there's no question that they need depth on the wings and in the backcourt. That would be something that obviously you're leaving yourself short at power forward, but I think I think the Sixers are in a better position to deal with that than to deal with the lack of depth. So and certainly, look, if you want to get out of Harris's contract, you could do worse than bringing in Tim Hardaway and Spencer Dinwiddie, something like that.
Yeah, I can see those things, but if you're looking at Dallas, and are you better off having them having the depth? You know what I mean? Having the extra players to be there. You'd be putting a lot of eggs in Tobias Harris's basket. To me, he's a guy that you make the move for if you think it's going to put you over the finish line, and I don't quite see him being the missing piece to the puzzle in Dallas.
Yeah, and it was Donnie Nelson who had the interest in Harris more so than Nico Harrison, the GM there now, who may still have an interest in Harris, but not sure about that. You mentioned the Lakers. That would be something. I mean, you could do Russell Westbrook, right? I mean, you could do Russell Westbrook for Tobias Harris. That would certainly make for some interesting times for the reporters in Philadelphia. You do Westbrook, maybe you throw in that 2027 pick, and you get back Tobias Harris. At least you're out of the Westbrook woods. At least
you put Russell Westbrook and James Harden in the same dressing room, and that's got to be, that's a reality show waiting to happen.
With Joel Embiid, I mean, that's the
well, but that's on the floor. But just those two guys, I could, well, even on the court, I could envision fist fights for the basketball.
They did all right for a while together in Houston. It wasn't a complete disaster, at least for a time. It didn't end well, but at least they held it together a bit. But it'd be interesting to watch Harris. I think 10.7 points in these 3 games. Small sample size, I know, but he has shot well from the 3-point line, 43% in those 3 games. So interesting to see what happens with him. Another team I want to move on to. Again, I'm Sean Deveney from Heavy.com Sports. This is Steve Bulpett, our NBA insider. Is the Chicago Bulls, who've had a season in which they've really exceeded expectations. I don't think there's any question about that. But you look at what they've done against the top 5 seeds from each conference. Now, they're one of the top 5 seeds in the East, obviously. So we're talking about the 9 other teams in the East and the West that are in the top 5. They are 3-14 against those teams. That's 0-3 against Miami, 0-3 against Philly, and 0-1 against Milwaukee. Those are probably the things that would have me most concerned. A lot of injuries, obviously, but does it matter? Is this the kind of thing that are we beyond a fluke and into a trend here?
I want to see them hold, because their big issue is defensively, and they miss Alex Caruso hugely. I wouldn't pass judgment on them until I see them playing against those teams whole, and they might have done some earlier in the year with those guys, but now that they've got it, they put it together more, because it does take some time to get all your pieces in alignment. The question is going to be when and if guys get back and healthy and on the floor together, do they have enough time to get it together before for a playoff run? obviously they're a very scary offensive team, but defense has just been killing them. And so I'd want to withhold judgment on that. Not a time to make bold proclamations.
Yeah. Certainly being without Ball and Caruso, you've lost your two best defenders at the point of attack, and that's shown. But one guy who would concern me if I was a Bulls fan is Vucevic. He has not played well in these games against the best teams in the league. And when you look at a Miami or a Philadelphia, if they've got a big guy there who can push him around a little bit, he gets pushed around, and that's the thing that would worry me. I'm looking at the 3 games against Miami, 10 points, 34% shooting. The 3 games against Philadelphia, 12 points, 36% shooting. He did have 19 points in his 1 game against Milwaukee, but he was 7 for 17 shooting. He's a guy that would worry me in terms of what might happen in the playoffs here. Really, that could be the key for them.
I can see your concern because on one hand, getting Ball and Caruso, they could be more of a team that plays with pace. And that would help Vucevic a lot because getting to play against a defense that isn't yet set is huge. But your concern is well-founded, I think, because in the playoffs it becomes more of a possession game. Yeah. And so a lot of your opportunities for getting up and down the floor quickly are taken away. So, yeah, that's something, that kind of like the game within the game that people will keep an eye on when the Bulls get into the playoffs.
Yeah, they rank. I was looking at this morning. They rank 13th in pace, which is faster than I would have thought, especially missing Lonzo Ball as much as they have. But that is a team that likes to get up and down, and if they're able to do that, then Vucevic can be much more successful. But when they play slow and they get in the half court, it's probably not going to be the best thing for him. If you have another big, if you've got a smaller big guy who can't handle his size, that's an advantage for the Bulls. But there are plenty of teams in the East that have big guys who can handle him, and that's probably part of the problem here.
But having a guy like Vucevic, if he wants to get up and down the floor, there are opportunities. I mean, looking at Boston, one of their big I think edges that they have over a lot of teams is you've got Rob Williams and Al Horford, both of whom are very good and willing runners. And that's, there are opportunities there. The Celtics have done a lot better job with pace over the last, several weeks. And having bigs that will run is very important.
Yeah. So, I think Chicago is definitely going to be worth watching here. And like you say, as they get guys back, how quickly can they get them worked in and acclimated? I think Billy Donovan's done a great job with that team. The fact that they are where they are, you've got to tip your cap to them. Hopefully they get healthy and we'll see how we judge them. But I want to move on because one of the funniest things I've seen over the last week or 10 days has been the criticism from Warriors fans and others of Steve Kerr, who, by all accounts, is a pretty good coach and has had some success there. They've lost 4 or 5. Obviously they've got some injury issues as well, but you see all the Twitter Naismiths out there who criticize his rotations and things like that. What do you think of where the Warriors are and where Steve Kerr is right now?
Well, rotationally, they've been in a difficult situation because first you didn't have Klay Thompson, then you got him. Now you're bringing him in. You're trying to acclimate him and see how it fits. He's playing with some guys he hasn't played with. And you want to get that together. There's the missing Draymond thing remains critical for that team because he's one of those guys that it seems to get everyone in line. I just look at them and say, you've got young guys that are trying to find themselves. you've got older guys who I think there's a small measure of boredom, probably a terrible word to use, but I think, when you've made the long journey that often as they have, that the regular season, it's not, the games don't appear as critical subconsciously to a lot of those veteran guys as they would to other teams. I mean, a team like Memphis, every game is like, wow, another opportunity. This is great. We haven't done this before.
Right.
And it's like, the Warriors, we've done this 1,000 times.
Yeah.
So there are different factors at work there, bringing new guys together, trying to figure out the proper rotation, but you really can't do that because you don't have one of your critical pieces. And then figuring out how well that's going to work. I think, there will be a measure of newness once that team gets to the playoffs, if it can do so healthy. And then we'll see what they're up to.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things that Kerr is doing, which is not unwise. I mean, this is something he should be doing, is sort of testing, seeing what he can get out of different guys in different situations. That's going to screw up the rotations, right? I mean, the rotations are not going to be that consistent. And like you say, if you have some guys who are maybe, look, what you're going to get out of, an Andre Iguodala or Steph Curry. So if you start messing with rotations to see, okay, well, how does this guy play with this guy? Or how does, what do these three guys look like when they're on the floor together? It's going to look a little strange from the outside. But I can guarantee you that he's got a long-term plan here, that he's thinking ahead to, okay, I want to see what I can count on, when we're in a playoff series and somebody's injured. I want to see what this looks like. That's what these games are for. I think he's doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that I don't know. Looking from the distance, I just think it's hilarious that people are questioning. I guess you can always question rotations and things like that. But to your point, to think he doesn't have a plan, to think that someone like Steve Kerr, who's a relatively bright guy, fair to say, to think that he doesn't have a plan is silly. I think one of the toughest jobs for an NBA coach is to have a very good team and to keep those guys not just engaged, but willing to play a part, but getting those guys to fill roles when, if Klay Thompson were on another team, he'd be one of the faces of the league, right?
Yeah, right.
But just, getting those things to work. We've talked about this in the past with Coach of the Year things. It's often the guy that takes like a bad team and makes it mediocre. But the guys that like the Popoviches and people like that have very good teams. Sure, they've got talent, but we can think of a lot of teams that have some very good talent that went nowhere. The Clippers of a few years ago, that was a team that was loaded, and it just kind of imploded. Yeah. I had one GM said to me that look, there's no coach right now who is more bulletproof than Steve Kerr. Greg Popovich in San Antonio, they could nudge him into retirement. Even Eric Spoelstra could probably be fired before you'd ever fire Steve Kerr. He's bulletproof right now. So that kind of that. I think that makes sense. I think I would probably agree with that he would probably be number 30 on the list of coaches on the hot seat. I would put Spoelstra and Kerr together as Kevlar twins.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
I think they're in good shape.
Yeah. I don't think they're worrying about job security at this point.
That's what I is that Spoelstra has, has taken some guys who aren't quote unquote stars and made them and put them in situations where they've become stars in roles. And, that's a difficult thing to do. And he's pulled that off. So that's,
without, completely, stepping back, being able to do that and still win. And
Right.
Kerr's done that to an extent as well. He's trying to do that with Kuminga. You can see that. Even Moses Moody's gotten some playing time lately. You could argue, you look at Jordan Poole and the kind of year he's had. He's done a pretty good job of within the context of trying to be a 55 win team. Still getting some player development in there.
Yeah, and you look at the difference in there are some honest contrasts between the Warriors and Lakers. The Lakers are older. The Lakers haven't had Anthony Davis for long stretches, but the Lakers do have LeBron James. They do have talent, huge talent, and they haven't been able to make their other guys work. I think it's a little more difficult for Frank Vogel to get that to happen because I'm not sure where the real impetus for things in LA comes from. But,
Kurt Rambis.
Well, yeah, that and
I'll never understand that.
Number 6, LeBron, when you see, LeBron is still a freaking amazing player, but when you see his body language when a possession doesn't work, things like that, that's got an effect, especially on guys, on other guys. It's like, it's tough. And it's got to be tough on LeBron to carry that much weight, but he demands to carry that much weight, but
yeah,
I think that's been, when you see them losing that lead to coming back against Dallas, and then losing the lead at the end, getting outscored that terribly down the stretch. And, he doesn't get the ball on a possession in the post, and he just totally slumps and stands there as the ball's going the other direction. That's it's tough.
Yeah. And, I've seen that from him before, but we've seen it, in places like Cleveland, but we've seen it in late December, and then they make a trade in January, and by March everything's rolling. That's typically how it's gone in the past. We don't usually see this here early in March from LeBron, no matter where he's been.
Yeah, that's I think it's going to be difficult for them. I will not budge off my opinion that
all along. Yep.
That if they're healthy, they've got a puncher's chance. And LeBron kind of stated so the other night. But having said that, if they do go down, it's not going to be pretty at all.
No, right.
Remember, LeBron's first year there, it wasn't a beautiful situation. He was seen as the guy. He was seen as the guy after Kobe, and that it just didn't. It wasn't happening at all. He didn't have the kind of team he needed, but he was not. I think we didn't have a situation where he tried to put out some promotional thing, and all these people show up, and he didn't show up, and it wasn't happening. They win the championship in the bubble, and I think there was some grudging love from Laker fans, but the Laker nation as a whole has not embraced LeBron, and it's certainly not going to embrace him when he's talking about potentially finishing his career elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's kind of it's a weird relationship, I think, out there.
Yeah, and you look at the history of Laker stars. Kareem obviously came sort of early part of his career, but certainly played a long time in LA. And everybody else,
excuse me.
You had obviously Wilt Chamberlain, but everybody else who's sort of a Laker icon, was drafted and was a Laker. Was a Laker through and through.
Yeah, and the guys that did come in, like McAdoo helped them win.
Yeah.
But those guys, they came in and they were hugely important pieces, but they were kind of like, brought in to do a job.
Yeah.
They weren't the face of the franchise, and LeBron is.
Yeah.
Who is the the homegrown face of the Lakers now? Nobody.
There's nobody, right? Austin Reeves.
Yeah, I mean, so it's and LeBron is in Miami, not one, not two, not three, goes back to Cleveland. Cleveland, this is for you. When he's not, he goes out of his way to say, I'm not from Cleveland, I'm from Akron. He kind of felt like Cleveland never really embraced him. Talking about when he was growing up and stuff, and was not really a fan of the Cleveland teams. It was funny. He was a huge Yankees fan, and I always used to give him abuse about that. It was, I'd met him when he first got to the NBA. His general manager was a classmate of mine in college, Jim Paxson. So I got to know LeBron a little bit early, and his first appearance for the Cavaliers was in the Summer League, which was in Boston.
That's right. Yeah.
They have the little press conference in a classroom on the second floor at UMass Boston. Excuse me, after his first game, and he proceeds to say, I was terrible, I was this, I was that. He was just, unhappy with himself, and he finishes and he walks over to me, and we're talking for a second. I said, look, you only made one mistake today, really. And he was what? I said, wearing that Yankees cap in Boston. And so huge Yankee fan, and Yankees are hated in Cleveland, as they are most everywhere. But then he's a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Yeah, right.
And like one day, the Celtics were in Cleveland for a game, and it was morning shoot around, and he's leaving the locker room, and I see him in the hallway with either a Cowboys cap or a jacket on, and I looked at him. I said, damn. I go, and the Browns are like the thing in Cleveland. That's real love in terms of a fan base and its team, for better or for worse, and it's mostly been worse out there. But the people right. Still, that's real affection and real loyalty. And I looked at him. I said, man, damn. I go, don't you like any Cleveland teams? And he pauses and he turns to me and he laughs. He goes, Cavaliers. I'm thinking, well, and then you left him, So,
yeah, right.
How much love, yeah, it's, I think when you look back at LeBron's career, he's going to be viewed as one of the greatest all-time players, hands down. And although people are putting Michael Jordan above him, and I can understand that, LeBron's combination of outside ability and raw power makes him that's a tough thing for others to overcome in the argument.
Yeah.
But he's going to be viewed as a great basketball vagabond, winning championships in 3 places as the best player on your team. That's a little different. Yeah.
No, you're right. That we've seen players change teams before, but 3 times, that's a little strange. Unless you're Danny Green, and that's a different situation. Right?
You're a complimentary player.
Right. That's expected.
Or Robert Horry, winning different places. Yeah. But to be the guy, and he's you look now and say, what will his next move be? What can his next move be? I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. Well, one more thing for you, Steve, here before we take off. And that is go back to the Warriors. Looking at Andrew Wiggins, all-star guy, really good story this year. The way he's played on a winning team after kind of getting a reputation as a guy who just wasn't that, who wasn't a guy who could win. The word out last week was that Jordan Poole, the young wing, the Warriors want to sign him to an extension. If they sign him to an extension, that could be it for Wiggins in Golden State, who's got one more year on his contract, $33 million. They could certainly just kind of play it out, which is absolutely possible, or they could try to get something for him. I just wonder, kind of what do you think of where Wiggins is in terms of that Warriors team?
We'll see how things work when they get their team together, and how important he is then, or whether the other people can fill that role. But yeah, you've got to manage not only your rotation, but you've got to manage your books, right? You've got to manage your payroll. So I think your point is well taken, because they could be the Warriors could be in a really perfect sell high situation,
right?
Or with an Andrew Wiggins, and again, though, I think you have to wait to see how this year plays out to see if other people can step up into that role, or how well he does in that role. I mean, he clearly wasn't good being the man, but because he made All-Star status, there might be someone that thinks, hey, a GM says, I'm bringing in an All-Star here, and and makes that run. I'd be a little reticent if I were another team to do that, but if you've already got everything you need without having Wiggins, and you're the Warriors, then whatever you get for him is gravy, and it helps your bottom line just to keep you I'm sure they're still like a luxury tax team, but maybe saves you and allows you to do other things.
Yeah, I mean they're deep into the luxury tax, but the thing about that is that for every dollar now they're paying something like $5. So if you can save $10 million, you're actually saving $50 million, which I'd like to have Joe Lacob and Peter Guber's money, but I think even for them, $50 million probably means something, So, I think
$2 million here, a few million there,
yeah, it all adds up, right? Pretty soon you're talking about real money, right? But I'd go back to Dallas again. I think Dallas will be star hunting this summer. I think that's one of the things that when they made the trade for to send out Porzingis, that they have an idea of perhaps being able to, and you could get. Again, you get Hardaway. I think no question that Dallas shopped Hardaway at the trade deadline. And then, you probably have the same deal, whether you could have Hardaway and Dinwiddie or Davis Bertans, who, played sparingly in Washington, but is starting to get back on the floor and showing that he can shoot the three. So, you could do Hardaway and Bertans for Wiggins. I think that would be something, that would at least be worth considering if you're the Warriors.
But then, but do you have too many players then? I mean, I think they'd be looking more to shed, and maybe, you trade Wiggins and you get like, I think picks would be huge for the Warriors in that situation, because, if you can speculate, send Wiggins out to a team that isn't great and get a number one pick out of it, and kind of play the lottery on, what will this pick be worth? Because when you're the Warriors, remember, like, they've done a great job drafting where they've drafted, but getting a high pick, those things are difficult when you're a team that's, drafting at the very bottom, near the very bottom of the first round every year.
Yeah. And I think ultimately, the fallback option is not bad, and that's just let Wiggins play out this year, next year, have him play out again, and and kind of keep this same rotation, especially if you go deep in the playoffs. Obviously, if you go to the finals, then run it back and give yourself another chance, and then just let them walk in free agency and hope that Kuminga and Moody, these guys that you've invested in, that they're ready to play. I mean, that's why you do it. So that's sort of the fallback option. Might be the best option in the end.
And I think one of the biggest things we're overlooking, is that the importance of depth. You're trying to, keep your payroll within some reason, and that's difficult right there. But you look at a situation like Boston, and it doesn't appear as if Jaylen Brown's ankle injury is a long-term thing, but you take him out of the situation right now. They got the game tonight, Thursday, against Memphis, and what's behind him? What's your depth? You haven't prepared Aaron Nesmith really for this opportunity yet. You've played the kid sparingly, and now you're going to expect him to come in and pull down major minutes for you. It's going to be tough. So as much as you can think, well, it's a luxury to have the guys that the Warriors have, and to have an Andrew Wiggins at his money, and do you need it? Is he superfluous? An injury happens, and that depth becomes very important. And what do you have for quality people behind your major players?
Yeah. Well, that's all I had for you, Steve. I appreciate your time here. Always nice to chat with you.
No worries.
And thank everybody for checking us out. And check out Steve's work at heavy.com. Thanks, everyone.